What's going on, everyone? In this episode, we're discussing Longlegs. Let's talk. So, Longlegs. What's up with this movie? It's not one that I had any real intention to watch, but of course, sometimes conversations with family can lead you to getting caught up in watching movies that you would not otherwise watch. I think what intrigued me about the idea of this movie was I'd been hearing about the comparisons between it and Silence of the Lambs, which I loved. That was a fantastic movie. And so that was enough to get me at least open to the idea of watching this movie. And having seen it, I don't know that that's a fair comparison. It is if you want to give somebody a sense of the movie. I think that what's probably more accurate is probably something like Seven, which is another movie that's being tossed around as a film that's seems to have some sort of influence on this picture, and maybe even a little bit of Fallen. Oddly, that's just me. That's what I came to the table with after having seen the movie, the Denzel Washington movie, Fallen. Seemed not that it was inspired by that, but that was one of the movies that came up for me when thinking about what this movie feels like. So, what do we have? What's going on with this movie? This movie stars Micah Monroe as the lead FBI agent, Lee Harker. She's joined by Mr. Blair Underwood, who I hadn't seen in ages. He was one of the 90s leading men back in the day when Denzel Washington and all these other dudes were coming up on the scene as sort of one of the early waves of the black movies in the 90s. He was one of those dudes. It's good to see him back here. He plays Lee's superior, Agent Carter, and then you have Alicia Witt, who I remember from Law and Order: Criminal Intent. She was a replacement partner in one of the rotating Criminal Intent. If you don't know, Criminal Intent had a revolving door of detectives following Gordon and Eames when there was this period of time when they weren't on the show, and Alicia Witt was one of the detectives who came in to fill in, for our leads. That's what I remember her from. But she plays Lee's mother in this movie, and of course, I can't not mention Nicolas Cage, who I had seen. You may know this already at a film festival. At one of the Cinequest film festivals, and got to see him talk about his career. And Longlegs is the latest in his very eclectic, very long, and unique career. So what do we have going on? What is this film about? This is about Lee, played by Monroe. She is the young FBI agent assigned to a cold case. There's a serial killer who had been killing people over the course of 30 years or so. This is Longlegs, who is the killer. And that's the name they know him by. This is what's going on. And for all this time, the FBI agents, law enforcement communities have not been able to capture this guy or stop the killings. And so Lee gets assigned to this case, and all of a sudden, new details start emerging. Pieces start being put together, and she's able to sort of work through what's going on to figure out what's going on with the serial killer and how to catch this guy. We also learned that there is a bit of a personal connection in some way to the killer. We don't know yet, but we know there's something that's personal in some way that is going to end up driving a lot of Lee's decisions. And it informs why she becomes so important to the elements of the story. And that's what we have. That's what the story is about. Now, off the top, there's a lot of the talk, or there has been a lot of talk about this movie being one of the most unsettling films, the scariest film you'll see all year. That may be true for some people. That was not true for me. I think the movie is more disturbing than anything else. It's more sort of atmospherically disturbing, more atmospherically unsettling than it is scary. You look at movies like Hereditary, for instance, which I still have not seen. I haven't had the guts yet to watch that movie, but I'm sort of building myself up to, at some point one day, be able to watch that movie. And then you have, of course, Midsommar. There are movies that feel that have a sense of they're scarier to the point to where you don't even want to mess with them. That's where I am on those movies. Those movies feel like there's an energy about those movies that feel like, I don't know if I even want to even get close to those movies. I suspect I will at some point. I just haven't made my way to to it. That was not the feel, and this is without even having seen the movies, but knowing enough about them to understand the essence or the energy around them that's kept me off from watching those movies. And hearing from other people whose opinions I trust, other friends who've seen these movies, people are like, oh, no, you don't mess, it'll mess you up. And so, I just haven't built up the juice for that just yet. And I didn't feel that with Longlegs. Even thinking of, even the idea of Longlegs didn't bring that up for me. And having seen the film now, I think certainly there are things that sort of make you feel uneasy and, anxious, like most thrillers do. A good thriller should do that. And if they're really good, or if they're really sort of unsettling, when you leave, you're left with some thoughts that will, they stick with you for a little bit. It makes it a little hard to go to sleep at night. It makes you a little bit more afraid of the dark than you used to. Things like that. Longlegs didn't necessarily do that for me, but it may for you. If you haven't seen it and you decide to see it, it may do that for you. And if you like this kind of movie, I think it's right up your alley. You like thrillers, you like atmospherically dark and disturbing fare, then this picture might be for you. So it wasn't super scary. It was, however, very well shot. It had some really nice images, the nicely composed shots. I think that actually it lent itself to a sense of odd beauty in a story that is decidedly dark and obviously not a feel good situation. but so much of art in general can be like that. There can be some images that you see that are quite unsettling and grotesque even, but then there's a beauty in that. And I think Longlegs has that feel. I liked that it felt consistently sort of claustrophobic in terms of how we approach the story through Lee's perspective as our hero, our lead character that we're following. We're understanding the story through this lens, and we understand that she has, a kind of gift and is an instinct about the investigative work that she's doing. But also we discover that it's more than that. It's more than an innate gift. There's something about the proceedings that feel beyond her understanding, beyond her control, like there's some other force governing that ability in a way that you don't see in other movies with cops or detectives and things. People who they have like some of those characters have like a knack for stuff. They have a natural gift. And in this movie, I think the beauty about Lee as a character is that the way she's able to figure out pieces in the story is presented as if it's this innate gift, that it's natural, that it comes from her. And it is that to an extent, but you discover there is this other force. You learn about, there's elements of the occult possibly having playing a role in the story, and that's the piece that I think sets this apart from something like Silence of the Lambs or Seven or anything else. This is where the Fallen situation comes in. Fallen, if you remember, that movie dealt with, spirits in some kind of way. And if you haven't seen it, I think you should. It's a good movie. I think you should definitely watch it. Not even spirits per se, but like sort of the idea of spirits or the essence of what that is. And I think Longlegs has elements of that play a role in the story in some way. And I think that's interesting. That's another wrinkle that's not often seen in stories like this. So you could look at it as like a bit of a mashup, if you will, of Silence of the Lambs and Fallen, if you want to, or really more accurately, Seven and Fallen, something like that, something along those lines. I think Monroe, as an actor, she's great as the lead. She comes off as awkward. It's like socially awkward, and like she doesn't know how to fit in normal sort of social interactions. She looks like she has a hard time doing that. And I think Monroe does a good job of playing that, given the world she lives in as an investigator and the terrible things she's exposed to. It's hard. I would imagine it'd be hard for someone like her to casually have conversations with people when she's, especially at where we meet her in the story. She's so wrapped up in this case that she's having to figure out. And I think Monroe is solid enough. Obviously, I think and then of course Blair Underwood is great. I think of one of the movies that I don't know if people talk about a lot, but I remember him from a film called Just Cause, starring Sean Connery and Lawrence Fishburne, which I need to watch again. That was a very good movie. And Blair Underwood, he's charming, and he's handsome, and he's a terrific actor. And so to see him in this movie as a superior in the FBI, and he plays it very straight, and but also imbues the character with a sense of cool, and he's not a run of the mill superior that's barking orders all the time. He has some character to him, and it's cool to see him. But obviously, I think the bigger conversation of this movie, it has to be Nicolas Cage. So you've probably heard a lot about this movie, and specifically about Nicolas Cage's performance as the title character, Longlegs. You'll probably hear things like it's one of the most unhinged performances. It's unsettling, and it's all these. And yes, it's all these things. But personally, I'll say this. This was a role from Cage that at times, if you look at like if you look at like a chart, and there's this calibration chart for a performance for actors, there's a sweet spot in the middle somewhere that's always going to be safe. And if you know anything about Nicolas Cage, particularly in his more recent outings, you could say this about the whole of his career, but there are several performances throughout his career you can pick out and say, okay, if in between this space is the neutral sort of safe zone, Cage doesn't stay there. Sometimes he goes all the way over here and all the way. He goes all over the place, and I think you could say the same in this movie. Longlegs is a character. He's unsettling. He can make you feel very uncomfortable. And if you take it seriously, the tone of the movie wants you to take it seriously. And I think for the most part you do. There are, however, parts, or at least there were for me, where Cage's performance ventures into areas that are borderline comical and all the way comical. Like there were a couple parts where I couldn't help but laugh during certain and I don't know what that says about that doesn't mean his performance was bad, because it wasn't. There's a certain way that this character is portrayed. He's he's like a fanatic. He's fanatic a little bit about what he believes in and why he's doing what he's doing. I think that's where that comes from. And the Oz Perkins, the director, allows Cage to do what he does. And again, like I said, for the most part, it works. But there were a couple times where it made me laugh, and so I don't know, and I don't know that I was supposed to laugh. I feel like my issue was that it didn't feel like it was a intentionally funny situation. Maybe for most people, Cage was thoroughly disturbing throughout, and he didn't feel that way to me. So, but take that for what you will. That was my my feeling on it, and you see what you think about it. I think the score is great. I think the narrative itself is strong. The writing overall is serviceable. It's solid for this picture. I don't know. I think you may pick up on certain clues and things depending on who you are as a viewer and and your ability to either allow yourself to be taken into the story or not. How well you do that. How well you allow yourself to be taken into the story or not. So that may be a bit of a letdown for you if it comes to that. Some of these movies, sometimes it's inevitable that they can be predictable. And if they're predictable and still well done, I think you could forgive it. Longlegs ultimately is well done. I don't know that, again, I was let down in that, I don't know that I wanted to be scared, but I was unsettled. And so I give it some points for that. And I think what I would say, so do I recommend this movie? If you like thrillers, absolutely, I recommend this movie. Watch this movie if you like thrillers. If you don't, then steer clear from this movie. But if you're a film head and you're curious about how this movie does its thing, I think also it's worth a look. It's worth a look. Like I said, the film is very well shot. The cinematography is great. It also has moments where it changes aspect ratios, and that's always cool to see in movies where it's a story that is set in the 1990s, and it feels like that. And the aspect ratio shift adds to that, where you have the shift that denote time and place. And that's always cool to see when films play with that and give the audience a sense of, puts us in a certain mind frame. There's even things where the camera is out of focus and we're trying to sort of figure out what we're seeing, and just the way it does that, and the way it plays with light, and the way it plays with like shadows and stuff. It's really actually well done. So if you care about that kind of stuff, I think it's worth a look. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for this review. I'm curious to know your thoughts if you've seen it and what you think. At the end of the day, it's a solid movie. It's not Silence of the Lambs and it's not Seven, but definitely watch those movies just for kicks, because they are good movies. And Fallen is also a good movie, so check that out. More reviews on the way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.